Well, the most recent dream I had was last night. It was about fire ants swarming all over my body. Woke me up pretty quick. Describe them? I hardly got a good look at them before I woke up. Matter of fact, I'm not 100% on them actually being fire ants. I can only tell you that there were a lot of them, and they were moving fast as hell. No, they didn't bite, or at least I woke up before they did. Well, I felt afraid, of course. Yeah, just afraid. What else would I feel? Sorry to be so snappy. It's just difficult, how people get when their sleep pattern suffers. Cranky and dull and all that. It's pretty new to me, just walking around like a zombie. Never realized how much a lack of sleep can make it feel like you're less awake. Yeah, that same dullness does make it hard to sleep, too. Never thought of that either, I guess. This is all new to me. I've never been an insomniac or as anxious or I suppose as introverted as I've been lately. Frankly, I don't even think that I had the imagination to come up with all these dreams until recently. My buddies always joked about me being a bit of a jock, not a dreamer, not somebody who'd you suppose would have these mental problems that I've been having. I never thought I'd wind up in therapy, honestly. Yeah, I do feel a little bad about it, even though I don't feel judged by you at all. I really like being sane. Well, yeah, I suppose everyone's a bit crazy. Actually, I'm pretty crazy too, just not in that way. I mean, I'm crazy because I'm not afraid enough, rather than being afraid of everything all the time. Impulsive. That's the word. They call me impulsive. I like to call me adventurous. An example? Well, last month, I was on my way back from Maine, coming back from visiting my parents, and I stopped at a hotel in Mass for the night. In Arkham. Weird-ass town, but the hotels are cheap for how nice they are. It's because, get this, everyone's afraid. So many ghost stories hang around that town that people are just prone to keeping out. Like, you'd think it'd be a tourist magnet, but even the damn tourists are too scared. I wasn't. I'm not superstitious. And I was right not to be, because I got out fine, sleeping in a hotel room that only cost $40. Anyways, the next day I decided, I've got a couple more days of vacation, I'm going to the beach. Yeah, Massachusetts. I grew up right next to Cape Cod, so I went down to Kingsport, which is only about 3 miles away, and I went, was going to the store to pick up some sunscreen, saw this house. Very old looking, very lonely, standing at the dead end of a short road a good distance away from the other houses. It looked abandoned for maybe 100 years, maybe more. Maybe the fact that it was still standing despite its apparent age and abandonment, or maybe it was the generally unstable look of the house that made me curious, but I felt inclined to knock on the door. No answer. I looked around, learned that the house had belonged to folks considered by the locals to have been witches. Imagine that! The locals were still afraid of witchcraft in the 21st century. Backwards place, Kingsport. I bet you can guess where this is going. Yep, 30 years old, still adventuring in haunted houses. Although, it wasn't considered quite haunted. Not in the normal sense, anyway. It's hard to explain. People don't like to talk about it and give me these cryptic answers that suggest something like infestation of spirits or demons, but not spirits of the dead. I couldn't pin exactly down how or what they thought was going on in there, but the people clearly loathed that house based on something more like instinct than rumor. So naturally, that evening, after a somewhat lonely but still enjoyable time swimming, beating the June heat with all that cold New England water, I decided to investigate the house. Now, I'm not superstitious. Did I already say that? Yeah, but I will say that these rumors about the place seemed more grounded than any other so-called haunted house I've ever seen. I went in through a rear window with nothing but a little flashlight, my wallet, my phone, and the Swiss Army knife I like to keep on me. Pretty quickly, I saw signs that it was indeed infested. Holes in the walls were so many that I had to wonder how the place even kept up straight. But oddly, it didn't creak all that much. Still, if I were smart, and maybe not impulsive, I wouldn't have been in there at all, what with how unstable it clearly was. On the other hand, if I were anxious or a dreamer, a little bit crazy in the other way, I probably would have turned back. The place was demonic. Like, it smelled not only extremely dusty, but filled with some other scent I can't quite describe. Part rubbery, part rotten, part sulfuric, and totally noxious. It alone kept me from more fully exploring the house. And then there were the contents of the room. I couldn't see anything without shining my flashlight on it. After scanning the room with my flashlight, I saw that it was filled with huge and decayed old books, mostly not in English, and instruments that I have little to no idea how to describe, maybe chemicals or something. But then there was the religious-looking stuff. And I say religious, but I don't mean angels. There were geometric symbols that seemed vaguely satanic, but not in any way I've ever seen. No pentagrams, no crosses, nothing simple like that. Like, much more complicated, more inhuman-looking symbols. There were also a few idols of demons or monsters or aliens or spirits or strange gods, or I honestly have no idea of knowing which, but they were like nothing I had ever seen. Whatever they were, they looked disgusting and disturbing, even though they were only clean bits of metal. They seemed to come from some place far from anything human, not like the gods which religious people tend to worship. I mean, people think that the creator of the universe and his servants are basically just magic people, but that's fairy tale shit. These idols had this cold, alien gaze. A lot more like what cosmic power must really look like. Look at me, waxing poetic, drifting off like the dreamer I said I wasn't. Maybe that place made me a bit more imaginative. Maybe it made me a bit more anxious too. I don't know. Maybe that's crazy. In any case, shit, where are we? Time flies, I suppose, when you're, well, at least talking about yourself. It's kind of fun, I guess. Have a good week. Maybe I'll tell you a little more next time. Hello. I'm good. How are you? Okay, I lied. I'm tired and stressed. The nightmares are getting worse. Stranger. When I first started seeking therapy, the dreams were not a nightly occurrence, and they were always clearly about normal bugs and sometimes even rats or snakes. Now, they're definitely a nightly occurrence, and I can barely get more than a few hours in. Over-the-counter meds rarely help. I'm just too scared to sleep. Moreover, they aren't anywhere close to normal anymore. Well, yeah, I guess you're right. They were always kind of odd. Oh, no, it's okay. I didn't feel accused of being abnormal or whatever. You know, I know you wouldn't mean it that way. I just repeat back what you say a lot. Never noticed. Guess it's just one of my tics. Okay, here's the thing. I can't identify the creatures in my dreams properly anymore. Since the day after our last session, the things in my dreams have been stranger. Sometimes swarms, sometimes small but nevertheless deadly-looking creatures. Many of them are difficult to describe. Okay, one of them. One of the lone creatures, not the swarms, that is, seemed between a centipede and a scorpion, with this horribly engorged, fly-like face. Definitely seemed like a bloodsucker and it was huge for what it was, maybe 2 feet long. It slithered like a snake on those spindly legs with deadly-looking appendages at both ends. But its eyes... Flies have those strange eyes, the compound eyes. I'd looked it up, but they're different. Besides being huge for the head, like proportionally strange, and shifting light seems to filter out of them like a prism, projecting the image of a starry night with multiple colors that shift and realign. It's hypnotizing, which is why I stood still in terror, even as the pincer, whatever that thing was, just began to sink down into... Maybe I should take a break. Well, then there's these other kinds of nightmares I've been having. The ones with whole swarms of creatures. They used to be things like rats and ants and all that, terrifying at the time, but now I miss them. How sick is that? At least when a swarm of rats gnaws into me, I have some idea what's going on. But recently I've been waking up in dreams to find my body covered in these things. They're like maggots, or maybe like worms. Come to think of it, maybe more like little long jellyfish. You see, these are these tiny stringy things that squirm along my body. They're like string or yarn. Like the main body of the thing is made of smaller strings of jelly or ooze. Almost transparent but faintly colored with the fleshy kind of pink, like in raw, exposed skin. Other colors are reflected off the surface in a chaotic sort of way, and I said they were both like a jellyfish and like worms, right? See, they're long tentacles strung together to form this long, constantly squirming body, and then at the front, they seem to have this ring about them like the jaws of a maggot or a leech, but no teeth. I don't think they needed them. They just sucked at my skin, and I felt this strange sensation, like the most disgusting imitation of a tickle I've ever felt all over my body. I usually wake up before they get too extreme. But the most unsettling part of all these recent dreams is how real they're beginning to feel. Now, every time I wake up, I look down at my body, half expecting to be once again covered in them, or in the coils of that 2-foot monster or some other abomination I'm not ready to describe yet. It's just too much. Why now? I have no clue why I've become so mental just now. I have no inkling of trauma, repression, and no history of these nightmares. Not even a fear of vermin. So why? I'm so sorry to raise my voice like that. Maybe I should finish telling that Kingsport story, nah? Calm me down for a bit. So back at the so-called haunted house or whatever it was, I figured nobody's using these idols. Maybe I could take one as a souvenir. Should I not have said that? Do you need to report me to the police now? All right. Only if it's to harm myself or to others. Good. So I picked up an idol of this creature. How should I describe it? It was winged to begin with. It had wings that looked like a bat or a dragon or stereotype of a devil, but cruder. Like large, uncurved, toothed beak, a sort of segmented body, like an ant, and a set of antennae. But that description doesn't quite do it justice. Its texture, like nothing I've ever seen, was not scaly, not insect-like, not like a skeleton or a mummy, but in some kind of space in between those things. Really, it was like the other idols, something I can only explain by these twisted analogies, because it resembled something that doesn't exist in this world. Something outside, like outer space? Well, yeah, but more than that. Outer space just means normal matter in weird forms. By outside, I mean something totally alien to us. To humans, I mean, because we're not familiar with it. Everything in outer space could be normal to us if we just got used to it. But this felt like something fundamentally outside of our understanding. Not just unknown, but unknowable. Yeah, this topic troubles me too, to be perfectly honest. Guess I'm out of the frying pan and into the fire. But maybe I don't need to describe it. I could bring it in next time. Yeah, I guess I am fidgeting, but I think I might have been this whole time. Oh, well, if I fidgeted more while talking about bringing it in, it was probably because it's a very strange thing to bring to a place like this. I have no idea what people will think. No, I don't think the thing itself scares me like that. It's just a piece of metal. You were right about the idol. Maybe you planted the suggestion in my head, who knows, but I am very anxious about the thing now. And I'm convinced now, more than ever, that it, or that terrible place I visited in Kingsport, must have been the trigger for this condition I'm in. I've seen it in my dreams this week. Not the small metal idol itself, but the thing, the being that it must represent. At first, there were only dim impressions of the thing lurking in the shadows of my room. I decided to move the idol out of my room. It didn't like that. No, I mean, I didn't like having it out of my room. The dreams got worse. The creature it represented no longer lurked in the shadows of my room. My dreams left my house for other locations I've been to. And some I think I've not been to. But everywhere I was, the swarms, monstrosities, they were there too. But now I could tell I was being hunted. Hunted by that black-winged thing the idol must represent. I'll be honest, I'm paranoid about the skies now. Especially the night skies in all their terrible openness. Too vast to see everything, too vast to see that thing when it comes down to prey upon me. For it moves too fast for its size. The sky is everywhere. I can't escape this fear like I could the fear of vermin I had earlier. Had? Yeah, actually, I can't say that normal vermin frighten me anymore. They seem so normal and wholesome compared to what haunts my dreams nowadays. No, I've not developed a fear of birds or bats, for this winged thing that the idol represents is nothing at all like even the most repulsive of vampire bats or vultures. Sheer size is the first difference. It was small in my early dreams, but it has now risen to several times my own body. And I know that it could all but easily snatch me with its talons. But they aren't quite talons either. This thing has no claws as we know them. Its feet resemble the flattened out and split ends of an insect's legs, more than anything like toes of a bird. In spite of this exoskeleton, other parts of this thing seem to have bone-like structures showed under flaps of dark, clammy skin. Maybe it is both an endo and an exoskeleton, or maybe the structures aren't bones at all. In any case, the eyes are the worst part. The huge fanged beak of this thing doesn't even stop before it hits them. They're empty, like a pool of black jelly nested into its beak and stretching far beyond, back to the rest of its head. They seem to quiver when they're near me. I wanted to rid myself of the idol forever, put it out of my mind. So yesterday, against my mounting fear of angering it, I threw it out. I don't mean to say angering it. Yes, of course, it's not alive. I only meant that its absence makes my dreams more terrible. And I was very afraid of bringing it in and showing it to you because I knew it would be too much to express my fear of the thing with it listening. So I drove away with it and put it in the dumpster of some random mall no less than 15 miles away. I'll never see it again, and now I regret it. The nightmare I had last night, was beyond the threshold of any I've had recently or ever. It was too vivid to express. My descriptions will come across as vague and metaphorical, but not because what I saw was unclear or hazy, but just because the experience was so distant from anything we had good words for. In an empty field of tall grass, I saw it. I ran, and I knew I had no hope of escaping, no place to hide. Then I realized it must be just a dream, so I crouched down. I covered my head, expecting to awake into the darkness of my room before it caught me, but I didn't. To my horror, the thing clutched me with its grasping hind legs like an eagle carries a fish and flew me up into the empty gray sky. As we rose, I struggled to escape, even though I knew I would fall to my death. Then the skies grew dimmer and dimmer. The stars began to emerge above me, and then something strange happened. The creatures of the swarms which haunted me in my dreams just slowly sort of faded in. They almost swam through the empty space like a dense prehistoric ocean, lawless and filled with predators. They were everywhere. Not just the strange maggot jellyfish which covered me in dreams before, but all kinds of primitive, half-transparent life forms. Some were like oversized, purplish amoebas or clusters of tentacles emerging from a slushing, multicolored core, or more bizarre invertebrate forms which I can hardly describe to you. Even though I can't explain them, I remember them, like they're still present. Nothing was static. In a moment, one creature could seemingly become another kind altogether. I couldn't predict anything about that hellish jungle. The beings convulsing, overlapping, devouring, dividing, recombining. They stretched out forever, like pure living chaos. But somehow, I could still see well enough through them to see the whole body of the thing the statue represented in the cold starlight. But over time, this changed. Everything but the jungle of these alien swarms darkened to the point of invisibility. I looked down as far as I could, but found no earth, no moon, no sun. It seemed like I waited forever. I tried to count seconds, then minutes, then hours, to give some conception of time, but after 30 minutes in the dream, I stopped counting. Then a long while later, I counted another 6 hours and stopped again. My conception of time must have been different from reality, and so there was no point trying to keep track of it. My back ached terribly. I couldn't wake up no matter how hard I tried. All that I could see was a maddening scene of life, which must have been like what it was before the dinosaurs, maybe before Earth. The more I looked at the strange patterns of this ecosystem, the less I understood it. It was maddening. I think by the time the scene changed, I lost a little piece of my mind. But the scene did change eventually. The things became semi-transparent again. Next thing I knew, I was approaching a planet completely covered in these enormous buildings of dark, purple stone. Or maybe it was just one giant, mostly spherical building the size of a planet. It was like the Death Star, but instead of clean, simple, elegant, polished metal, there were these intricate carvings of stone like nothing I've ever seen. They reached up to what must have been the size of cities. Some carvings reminded me of the quasi-religious symbols and idols that I saw in that damned house in Kingsport, but many I couldn't recognize. When we were close to the surface, the entire place stopped making sense as a linear sequence. There were only flashes, grim, repulsive idols, tunnels which led to places from which there was no tunnel behind us, and of curves which warped into jagged, angular corners that acted like curves when we left them, and of sounds. lower and louder and more evil than anything I've ever heard. The flashes ended in long, wide tunnels where those sounds grew deeper than I should have been able to hear. At the end of it was the end of me as a human being. I just knew it the way you just know things in dreams sometimes. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't wake up then. I don't think I could take seeing the being which produced that gurgling or that stench of death, of pus and infestation, even in a dream. I suppose that was what was waiting for me deep in the heart of that hive of beings from beyond. Right? There's only a dream. I don't know if I have some kind of cruel joker stalking me, or if I'm simply going insane. Yes, I suppose people do have lapses of memory, but I remember it so distinctly. How could I forget when it had such consequences within my mind? Who could follow me? Who could know? No. It must be in my head. Perhaps I only ever dreamed that I threw it out. Though my car seems to be missing the gas to account for the trip, there's no other way that infernal thing could come back to me. You should have seen how I contained my screams when I saw it right back on my dresser, leering at me with those black eyes. No, those gelatinous pools do not deserve to be called eyes. They do not see what we creatures of Earth see. They and everything about the blasted Byaki do not deserve to be compared to the parts of our bodies. I was about to tell you how I came to that name, actually. I've been doing some research. I figured that the idol was some tool of the occult, and over the course of several days, I traced the trail to a book that speaks of this terrible thing and of some of the other beings in my nightmares. It's an obscure late medieval text called De Vermis Mysteris. You know, it's ironic. See, the hunt for answers led me back to Arkham. Yes, by now I do fear it at least as much as the tourists do, but not as much as I fear that miserable old hive they call Kingsport. In any case, I bought a photocopy of the relevant section taken from the English edition of the book. Wretched and unsound indeed is he who stares too deeply into the stars, but wretched still is he who delves too far into the earth. For Yog-Sab-Hagai, the spawn of unholy union betwixt the black goat and the green flame, pollutes the troglodyte passages of this world, as she does the caverns of countless other outer orbs. Yog-Sab-Hagai is she who begets the swarms, and all mindless scavengers and vermin hordes worship her as their mother and queen, as the colony of ants and wasps worship their imitation of her. Larvae from the stars are her proselytizers. Even as they devour her fleshless body, they are launched from her temple planet of Zug into the empty void to spread their plague to those unfortunate worlds cursed with life. In unseen spaces, the larvae bore holes until a vast colony, unknowable to normal life, takes form. Among those few who may find the colony are those wizards who seek life beyond the grave. The larvae of corrupt and indoctrinate and devour these wizards that they worship the mother of worms, and honor her father and mother in festivals held deep within the world. Such is the way she has come to drag men to the depths, in degradation of all that it means to be man. But even as the mother of worms pulls some into the earth, some most accursed men are pulled upwards to Zug by means of the Byaki, those giant segmented bat-winged aviators whose beaks line with dagger-sized teeth, and whose black eyes quiver like a gelatin made from the marrows of all normal life, do her followers fly, and are her quarry dragged screaming into the stars? No! Of course I did not encounter this book before. I didn't hear anything about these either, I swear. Or I could have sworn. That must be it. I must have forgotten when I saw this before, repressed it. Yes, it must be only that. Repressed memories happen from time to time, right? Can I see somebody for that? Yeah, you're probably right. I should see a psychiatrist first. I'll arrange for that. Do you have anybody you could refer me to? At last! You are here to explain it to them! They don't understand! They don't understand! The wound from my fall is not what I fear. I must be fully insane now! I can see them! When I am awake, on and off, they say I'm delirious? I think I must be. Why else would I make a jump deadly enough to wind up in this hospital bed? Oh God! They're devouring me now! Can't you see them? No! Get them off! Get them! Maybe the sedatives are working now. Earlier, though, it only made me feel more helpless as they crawled on me. I'll try to give you a full account. No, I don't want to die. I was only afraid. Look, I'll start from the beginning. I woke up into a dream once more real than ever. Swarms of them littered the whole of my room, my body, leading in a trail out the door, and in the corridor, that shadowed Byaki let out an unearthly cry. It watched, otherwise silent and still, and filled that whole corner. They, the larvae, and the Byaki alike, beckoned me out of the door. No, I didn't try to wake up or run away. It was like the logic of the dreams. I was hypnotized. Don't you see? There was nothing for me to... Don't you see? I knew that I was to follow the path, that terrible, crawling horde, leading out the door, and march along the path into the night, to some unknown crypt. But I didn't walk out. I crawled like the vermin surrounding me, and I could feel their slick tendrils lubricating me, so it was faster than walking. Shit! I'm gonna retch. Please get the bolt. Quickly! The jungle of those unseen creatures that overlap was visible on this earth, in our own sky, not some distant corner of deep space, and convulsing and dividing and devouring among the streets of normal life. And I saw that they did not run through solid objects, but filled the whole of the atmosphere of waking life. I covered my mouth so as not to breathe them in, and then I realized I must have been breathing them in my whole life. And I stopped crawling, and I fainted. I woke up in a different location, the larvae still carrying me with no effort on my part, so I simply floated down the river of them, stared into my surroundings in sheer shock. It was just like that, a river, but alive with prismatic color reflecting from the larvae of Oxabagai. They flowed through this countryside area, with the only light being from the waxing moon reflecting onto the chaotic river. But the things were so reflective, I could see the whole scene clearly. I wish they were not. There was Byaki lined the sides considerable distances apart, but so that I could always see at least one. The ones I could not see, I could hear. They crooned together in faint, descending pitches in a manner like a cannon. Even fainter than the individual voices, there seemed to be some droning sound, perhaps from the resonance of their voices in some way an acoustics expert could maybe better explain, maybe not. I thought it was growing a little bit louder all the time, and then... I'm sorry. I hesitated to speak so long because I think that I saw that town again. Please don't say it. Fine, yes, it was Kingsport. But it wasn't the same. The modern buildings were all gone, and a few of them were replaced with older buildings I've never seen. Most prominently was a tall church at the top of its central peak. It was Elder Kingsport, the Kingsport, whatever foul witch who inhabited that musty house, and who fashioned or otherwise acquired the idol which has come to rule my fate must have known. She or it felt alive, too. It seemed like some place above, or maybe just all around me. She was smiling a twisted smile at my funeral procession. But we passed by Kingsport. Instead of flowing into its streets, the river passed over it to a seaside cliff north of town. There was a temple, a monolith at the top of that cliff that I'd never seen or heard of either. It was shaped like a massive exposed ring of the same material and style of design of Zug. Greasy, heavy purple stone carved with unrecognizable abstract details, standing on top of nothing but sheer naked earth rock. The circle was lined with about a few dozen byaki, standing still but unsilent guard. The droning had grown to be the primary sound I could hear, and was near unbearably loud from near the monolith. In the center of the circle was a bright column of white light that looked like it could swallow me whole. It was not earthlight. It didn't cast any shadows, and the column never seemed to end in or waver as I looked up in search of its top. I could see as I reached it that the larvae were being pulled up the thing like a tractor beam with not discernible source or end location. But I knew exactly where it came from, and I knew where it would lead. I wasn't hypnotized anymore, but frantic with fear. I could not go there again. I could not see what lay in the center. I snapped out of my trance and ran out of that flimsy, slimy flood. I feared that the byaki would snatch me with their hellish talons and drag me to that pillar. They did not. What they did was somehow worse. The wails grew louder, and I began to hear them not only from my surroundings, but as if they were coming from my own head. A force in me suddenly, overpoweringly wanted to writhe with the worms and endlessly feast upon the flesh of my brothers and sisters as they had feasted upon me and our common mother, In each of us lives a humble worm that devours and reproduces without discrimination, that forms the primal basis our finer life grows around. For an instant of the byaki's cries, I was only this primal monster, and I had nothing that I could call a self. But a second later, the human regained control. I could not live knowing what dwelled inside me. And what was to take over if I did nothing? Out of fear of what I might do, I quickly flung myself off that cliff into the inky ocean, hoping for only oblivion. That is where they found me. Nobody knows how I wound up in Kingsport. My car was some 300 miles away, still in Jersey. They asked me if I tried to kill myself and said that it was going to be all right, that the wounds were not fatal. The ones they could find were not fatal. True, but I'm not long for this world after hearing that cry. I understand now the price I pay for despoiling that ancient place. I only hope that sweet nothingness awaits me when I do go. I'm so tired now, and with any luck, this will be the last time I close my eyes. Before I can, though, for the good of the whole world, promise me that idol will be returned.
Morgan Gilliam was dead the next day, and the body's autopsy several days later baffled doctors, for flesh and bone alike were filled with small tunnels, much like those found inside a worm-eaten log, which would not close.
Hey guys, it's me, Phil. Just wanted to say thank you for all the patience after the last video. I know it's been a while, but this was hopefully worth it. It was a collaborative effort with J. Patrick Wentz, who not only wrote the story and directed me based on his vision, but who spent a lot of time composing the score for the video. That's right, all the ideas, the artwork used in the video, and all the terrifying sounds in the background came directly from his twisted, beautiful mind. All in all, I think it was pretty chilling. Here he is to say a few words for himself. So without further ado, J. Patrick Wentz, everybody.
Hello everybody, Patrick here, and I want to thank all of you for listening to the first short story I ever wrote. I decided to try my hand at writing a short story back in early 2017, as I had just finished the project I made out of reading every Lovecraft story in the order he wrote them. The influence of Lovecraft on this story should be fairly obvious, both from direct references and general tone, but I was also discovering around that same time that Lovecraft was not so much a lonely mountain of achievement as a keystone linking together diverse aspects of the chimera, sometimes called weird fiction. Personally, alongside with Lovecraft, Algernon Blackwood's The Willows inspired me to take a hard look at what thoroughly unnerves me as an individual and work from the ground up with this in mind. While the second-person dialogue format was inspired by Marion Crawford's The Screaming Skull. I began by inverting the notion of Lovecraft's that sheer scale equates to horror. Insects have always filled my nightmares more than large creatures, both because their small scale makes them difficult to see or pin down, and also thereby difficult to avoid, and because of their mindless vital energy. The second part of this is another thing that caused a lot of fear for me. Fear that the body might overpower the mind, fear that our supposedly higher motives are just masks or instincts of brute survival and reproduction. There's a lot more I could go into thematically, but to be honest, some things are better left to be interpreted, not spoken. Before I go, I would like to thank a few people beyond the listener. Phil, of course, for his wonderful dramatic reading and assistance with the soundscaping, and also Quaid Ibera, Hallie Levitt, and Charlie Wentz, my brother, for reviewing early drafts of the story, which helped me to revise it into the finished product you just heard. So thank you guys, and good night.
And with that, my friends, we come to an end. Thank you so very much for listening. I'll be dropping another video much sooner than last time. So, in the meantime, I'll see you guys next time.